My dad used to say, especially about my work as a professor. I don't know how many times he said this to me. After all is said and done, more will be said than done. And he was at least a little right about that. So here we go. Fall starts. I've divided my remarks into two big categories. First, some possible implications of the challenges we face right now. I'm referring to challenges associated with COVID and other COVID-related issues, like the fiscal hits so many people have experienced and are experiencing right now. I'll start there and then talk briefly a little bit about this coming year for HU from my perspective. What will the world, or more narrowly, the higher ed world, look like post-COVID? And when I use that phrase, post-COVID, I'm certainly not suggesting for a second that the virus will somehow just go away, maybe a vaccine or something, and then our world will get back to something closer to normal, closer to the way it was. People much smarter than me suggest otherwise. This is from a recent volume of The Atlantic. The coronavirus is simply too widespread and too transmissible. The most likely scenario is that the pandemic ends at some point because enough people have either been infected or vaccinated. But the virus will continue to circulate in lower levels around the globe. Cases will wax and wane, outbreaks will pop up here and there. Even when a much anticipated vaccine arrives, it is likely to only suppress, but not eradicate the virus. My son's girlfriend's a physician, and boy, she hit on this point many times the last time I spoke with her. For context, consider that vaccines exist for more than a dozen human viruses, but only one, smallpox, has essentially been eradicated from the planet. And that took 15 years of immense global coordination. We'll probably be living with this virus for the rest of our lives, unquote, from The Atlantic. So at least as a thought experiment, let's say we won't be going back to post-COVID normalcy at all. It will be with us in some form for the remainder of our careers, maybe our lives, maybe even after we're all gone. If we accept that, at least as a thought experiment, what are the implications for higher education in a couple different areas? Modes of delivery, instructional delivery, implications for the faculty, affordability, and a myriad of issues related to diversity and equity. The National Center for Education Statistics keeps tabs on the number of students engaged in distance learning. In the most recent year for which full data are available, about 5.4 million students, or about a quarter of all students in the United States, took at least one online class. About 2.6 million students took online courses exclusively, and the other took some combination of online and face-to-face. These statistics clearly show, this is not news to anyone, that online studies continue to gain in popularity. About 10 years ago, about 20% of undergraduate students took one or more online courses at all, and only about 4% took online courses exclusively. So you can see the growth in that. As you might expect, graduate level college students are substantially more likely than undergraduates to take online courses. Again, today, about 0.25% of American college students study online, a full quarter. Now that was last year. That was before COVID. What about today, this very day? You know, no one really knows. The fact is that a good number of colleges and universities around the country, even today, are still making the decision what they're going to do, to go fully online, some hybrid, face-to-face. Even as we speak, that's still being debated on many campuses. It just isn't settled. But I saw one report that wherever we all land, everyone in the sector, all colleges and universities land, millions more, not hundreds of thousands, millions more will be online this fall. Here's a good question. Of those millions, how many will come to the conclusion that online works for them or works well enough for them and continue to pursue online options from this term on? Not buy a room from us or anyone else, not purchase a meal plan from us or anyone else, or pay all the other costs associated with living away from home for 4 or more years. How many? Surely some will come to that conclusion, and the number of online students will probably continue to grow. With an estimated 5% decrease in high school graduates across the nation, that's a fact, and more of that diminishing population studying online, that's a prediction, it could be wrong. The conclusion in my head at least is pretty apparent. will have fewer students completing a traditional residential college experience. What many of us, including me, I might add, consider the gold standard of instruction. Fewer in the higher education sector generally, and fewer here on our own campus. Many experts also suggest that low-income students might seek to defer their admission or just drop out or take a job to support their families due to the financial pressures related to COVID-19 shutdowns. Also going on, the pandemic is slashing state tax revenues, increasing state expenses, likely leading to large cuts in public appropriations for higher education. That's true in the majority of states, the vast majority of states today. And that's absolutely the case here in New Mexico. And public universities, including HU, of course, will have to pay the costs to finance and maintain housing, food services, recreational facilities, with fewer students paying fees to support those amenities. These reductions in income are already leading to hiring and salary freezes across the nation and here in New Mexico. And budget reductions may become even more acute, just as they did a decade ago during the Great Recession. Let's turn to faculty issues related to COVID. In general, the last several decades, in my view, have not been kind to faculty in higher education. When I was a recently minted assistant professor years and years ago, I'd be the first to admit it. By the way, I can still hear my dad, after I finally graduated, incredulously asking me after years of schooling, finally earning my degree, was I just an assistant after all that? Was I an assistant professor? Oh, Lord. Well, yeah, Dad, I was an assistant only. At any rate, the proportion of tenure track and tenured faculty has diminished over time. Between 07 and 18, the number of full-time faculty in U.S. institutions increased by 40%, but the number of part-time faculty increased by 72% in that same period. It slightly decreased, that rate of increase for part-timers has slightly decreased over the last couple of years, but still today, if you are an undergraduate student in America, you are more likely to be taught by a part-time or adjunct faculty than a tenure track or tenured faculty. That's a fact. After completing my own degree at the U of A, Arizona, the first 2 academic units I worked in employed a total of zero, no part-time or adjunct faculty. Wow, what a change from then to now. The last 2 decades have been challenging for faculty in other ways. Salaries have actually stagnated starting in the 90s. When I was first out of school, I recall I received 3 years in a row of double-digit salary increases. The state just provided them to me. I didn't even know that I was going to receive them. I didn't even know anyone had asked for them. I was just informed that it was going to happen. Double-digit, 3 years in a row. The money just showed up in my check. Contrast that with compensation support for public higher education today. It's like night and day. So what about faculty changes after COVID? If lots of students are online, lots more, and not paying for and receiving the same level of attention and or student support they were paying for in a face-to-face kind of environment, what are we to do, the faculty? How might that change the very nature of our work? As a faculty member, I prided myself on my ability to effectively connect with my students in and out of the classroom. Like tons of other faculty members, my office hours were in truth kind of minimal opportunities for students to see me. I'm not bragging about it, but I can't ever remember saying that I wouldn't see a student who wanted to see me unless I just absolutely could not. I was on my way something else. And I know that still happens today all over the country and right here on our own campus too. I considered myself a professional and did what I could to serve my students. Joan and I had them over for dinners and breakfasts. Some students temporarily lived with us when they needed a place to stay. I say all this not to impress. As I said, I see lots of good colleagues engaging in that kind of thing all the time now. But if that kind of thing, that kind of intense personal connection is really the extra value we bring to the table, what will become of us if more and more of our students are not in front of us, not face to face? Will we, for example, have to find new ways, if possible, to cultivate those kinds of relationships? Or will we basically forego that value we add and simply allow others, I don't know who, to teach whatever content is relevant to students and just leave it at that? It's a good question. Let's turn to college affordability. The economist Richard Vedder, I brought him to Radford. I worked there. He stayed with us. He's really an interesting character. We should bring him here to Highlands. But he suggested, what is the most valuable material per gram or ounce? Gold, palladium, some other exotic rare metal? No. He says it's a piece of paper called a college diploma, which Americans fork over anywhere between 20 to 30,000 to more than 300,000 to acquire. In a period of economic uncertainty and for some unusually limited resources, increasingly people are questioning the purchase of this extremely valuable, extremely expensive, they would say expensive, I would say valuable, paper document. It's creating a budgetary crisis in multitudes of colleges. Why do people pay so much for the college experience? While academics talk about things like the joy of learning or how college improves the quality of civic life, overwhelmingly, according to Vedder, this is still his quote, the most important thing to students is the prospect of good future earnings, but at what cost? Too much, way too much, unquote. That's from Richard Vedder. Due to COVID, we are facing a very serious recession, and some have suggested that we are on the verge of a depression. An economist from UNM recently provided a presentation to the university presidents here in New Mexico and suggested that it might not be until 2025 that things return anything close to normal in terms of the economics and the economy of our state. Coming up with college tuition and fees online or on campus is tougher than it was a few months ago, much tougher. So, coupled with fewer high school students nationwide, the economic challenges so many people face, what if large numbers of potential students just simply take a pass, delay college, or maybe forego it altogether? Not pay tuition to any school, including us, and do whatever they can to join the workforce. That could happen, and soon, a potential outcome of COVID. Finally, let's turn to COVID issues in relation to those related to human diversity and equity. I'm hardly the first person to note that historical social injustices in regard to race, social class, and other demographic characteristics were endemic throughout our nation before COVID. They were there, no doubt. However, the pandemic has shown and is shining today a very bright light on those differences. And boy, they stand in stark relief today, maybe even more so than in the 1960s. Others have suggested that. I'm inclined to maybe think that's true. A recent study found that Black Americans are 3.5 times more likely to die of COVID than white Americans. In addition, the researchers found that other ethnic minorities die at a rate much higher than whites in regard to COVID. Those significant disparities in regard to the availability and affordability of health services, the food desert so often found in areas inhabited by poor people, et cetera, they all contribute to those statistics. There are many other higher education issues related to COVID and the economic impacts of that virus. For example, what will institutions of consider this one. What will institutions of higher education do with their incredibly expensive physical plants if faculty are mostly, let's just push on it, maybe entirely working from home, and students are learning from home or somewhere, not on campus? Wow. That's a lot of expensive empty territory, empty space. But those four, the four I previously mentioned, changes in mode of instruction, changes in faculty life, issues related to affordability, and issues associated with diversity and equity could have a dramatic impact on the academy and us. I think about those four all the time, others too. If you'll allow me though now, let me briefly share my own ideas. Not right now, but at the end of my remarks, I'll share my own ideas about those four issues. You certainly don't have to agree with them. Let's turn to our beloved institution, HU. I'll briefly touch on recent developments affecting us and what I see as the challenges and opportunities before us this year. Frankly, I could not have been more pleased coming out of last year's short legislative session. It was the best session for HU since I've served here. Our ING budget, that's the main budget we devote to our core mission, instruction, was increased pretty significantly, really. We did well in regard to our research projects and special projects. Those are new projects we asked money for. We got several of them and they were pretty well funded. And for once, a decent raise for higher education folks across the enterprise. All that was BC before COVID, the other time, as it's referred to. For a while in New Mexico, oil was less than $0 per barrel, less than zero, nothing. I facetiously thought about buying a couple barrels if an oil company would pay me to take them off their hands. Of course, it doesn't work that way, but still less than $0 per barrel. Now that's changed. Wow. Businesses temporarily or even permanently closed under state orders. Thousands of people were furloughed, went on unemployment, or lost their jobs altogether. And then the governor called the special session. Our legislators had a tough job to do. We should be very careful in criticizing them. Such a difficult job for our citizen legislators. Balancing the budget, which is their obligation, with many fewer resources than they had a few months ago, just months ago. Higher education is important in every state, including New Mexico, but it's not a mandate. So when recessions, let's call them what they are, cuts have to be made, higher education is a frequent target. And it was. We also, it's been pointed out to me many times, I need no convincing of it, but if our budgets are cut, we have another source of revenue, of course, tuition. At any rate, we lost millions in funding. All compensation was stripped away, eliminated altogether. There was plenty of pain and pain all the way around the higher education sector. HU wasn't singled out, but we took a good whack, no doubt. Fortunately, we had prepared ourselves for this kind of unfortunate situation as best we could. The big three fiscal challenges, as I referred to them, had been totally or mostly addressed. We handled the situation in the sub. I ask you, my colleagues, when's the last time you heard the word MACWA? I hope to never hear it again. That's behind us. It was a difficult fix, but we did it, and I'm glad we did, and we moved on. We handled the misadventure known as Highland Stable Isotopes. I'm sure it seemed like a good idea at the time. As it turned out, it wasn't. So check that one off. We handled that. We stopped adding debt to our auxiliaries. So those are the big three. And we're going to continue to, pay very close attention to our fiscal well-being, our fiscal house. You can take that to the bank, both figuratively and literally. Those are the big three, but there was a fourth too that we just recently kind of found our way out. Our problems with our regional accreditor, the HLC. When I asked about institutional accreditation during one of my meetings with the recruiters Highlands used to fill the job I have here, I was told, this was a quote. I didn't write it down, but I'm confident this was a quote. It was okay, no problems. I dug no further. That was a mistake and it's on me. Live and learn, I guess. But it was a problem and a big one. And we ultimately had to devote hundreds of thousands of dollars, not tens, hundreds, to address that situation. It was addressed, and since then we've had no significant issues with any other accreditor, including some specialty accreditors that are pretty difficult to achieve. But thanks to so many staff and faculty across the institution, we're doing well there. Last year and now continuing this year, we pushed hard in expanding selected programs and establishing new ones. Our alternative teacher ed program continues to serve significant numbers of students, and New Mexico desperately needs more and more high quality teachers, no doubt about that. We established a professional development school, a PDS, in partnership with Pewaukee and Los Alamos. More support for that initiative and similar efforts are hopefully on the way. Those school-based programs are much harder and more expensive than campus-based programs, but I'm totally confident they are better. Good teachers can and do come from all kinds of programs. But in my view, taking classes on campus followed by a one-term internship or student teaching is often not a very robust way to train teachers. We established a Native American Institute in our social work program and are in the process of working with the city of Albuquerque to assist them in rethinking, reimagining their approach to policing. We moved forward slowly, but forward in engaging a third party to assist us to build our online enrollment. More to come on that soon here on campus. We began the process of engineering some new programs in liberal arts disciplines and more. That level of innovation really has to continue if we're going to continue to thrive. Summer enrollment 2020 was up. When's the last time you heard something like that? Today, fall enrollment is up a bit. Will it hold? Will it grow? It's up today. That's what I'm telling you. Our retention data are trending in a positive direction, thanks to some investments we made, particularly after a visit to Georgia State, kind of the poster child for retention of particularly poor students. Last year, we exceeded our goal for private giving. Over the last several years, we've achieved positive results in every specialty accreditation, as I said earlier, including some that are really, really tough to achieve. Our fiscal situation today is much better than it was in recent years. I don't recall the CFI figures, the Consolidated Financial Index figures. That's kind of one statistic that captures our overall financial situation. At one time, it was less than 1. That is red zone. That is danger. It's much, much stronger. We're in good shape today compared to a lot of peers around the country. We'll continue to pay down the debts we have, improving our fiscal position even more. Last year's grant performance, $29 million, a 50% increase over the previous year. That's good news. Our strategic plan has had broad levels of participation, our new plan, and is nearing completion. At a recent RMAC meeting, one of the other presidents mentioned to me, in a whisper I might add, that HU was no longer a school everyone necessarily wanted to play. Again, good news there. We won the RMAC 2 years ago, first time in more than 125 years, men's basketball, and our first-year men's basketball coach had a great season last year. Several of our student athletes recently won national honors, and our new group of coaches are eager to push on those positive trends as soon as it's safe to do so. The Rogers renovation was completed on time and within budget, and recently won an award for top historical renovations. It's a beautiful structure. Because of COVID, we really haven't had an opening. Some of you haven't even been in the building, but we'll do that as soon as we can. We solved the soccer field problem by working collaboratively with another local agency. For the last couple of years, our women's team had to play home, quote unquote, soccer games in Taos or Santa Fe. Now we have a legitimate home field for our wonderful women's team. I'm really happy about that. That was not right to have them drive so far. We solved that problem. The campus has been broadly recognized, including recently, for our commitment to public art. And visitors to Las Vegas now sometimes include stops at our public installations. Yay for us on that one. Our recent audits have been strong, the best we've had since I've been here, with several nagging issues resolved. Our foundation, alumni, and HU boards have never been stronger since I've been here. We have excellent leadership on those boards, and people on those boards sitting on them are absolutely committed to our welfare. I've experienced many significant challenges since arriving at HU, but my bosses, the regents, have not been one of them. I've consistently been very favorably impressed with our regents. They all love HU. They want to do what's best for HU. They hold me accountable, which is their job. I mean, you know, that's the way it's supposed to work. And our new regents are no exception. So strong regent leadership. Recent graduating students and alumni surveys resulted in high marks for HU. Our pivot to online during the recent spring and summer terms was amazingly fast. And in the end, we served our students pretty darn well. There were hiccups, I recognize that, but pivoting is not about if it works for me, not about if it works for anybody, but does it work for our students? Are they served? And for the most part, I think we can be proud of the fact that they were. They completed classes, made progress toward graduation. Many of them graduated. We've been faced with additional COVID issues as we start the fall. Our return to fall plan was recently rated green, top rating by HED. So we're doing well there. I'm not sure that not experience a problem is necessarily a positive to add to our positive tally, but the last several difficult budget years have seen no furloughs or layoffs at HU. Of course, that is not the case on many other campuses. This is from a recent edition of U.S. News. Quote, many institutions have had to make stark choices to stay afloat. Now they are increasingly resorting to their last option, which entails laying off staff and faculty members. A move some fear could be a major blow to the quality of education. I agree with that, unquote. About 23% of colleges and schools across the nation have implemented some type of furlough or layoff, including some here in New Mexico. HU's not gone there, and I will not go there except as a very last resort. Losing a job, particularly when someone is trying hard and doing well, is devastating. It's devastating and terrible. That will be a last resort for me. I give you my word on that. These positive outcomes and avoiding one negative outcome are due to an enterprise efforts throughout the organization. And I never forget, when I get up, my feet hit the floor, who does this heavy lifting here at HU? That's you, my colleagues. That's the staff and the faculty of HU, coupled with the many efforts of talented managers and administrators, a dedicated and courageous board, my bosses, thousands of alums, friends, and supporters throughout the world, a supportive local community here in Las Vegas, and of course, the great HU students who never give up no matter what. All the things I've noted are good and positive, but the greatest things we do in the Academy and at Highlands often go totally unnoticed. That was true when I was a faculty member for decades, and often unrecognized. And yet, in so many ways, those things are at the heart of our work. As I've often said, academics really do three and only three things. We teach the truth as we know it. We make new knowledge in the disciplines we love, and we apply what we believe to be true to the human condition to improve humankind. That's it. And it's just those three at every institution of higher education across the nation, across the world, really. And it has been that way for hundreds of years. That's one of the traditions, the long-standing ideals that I hope we never get rid of. That's what we do. Those wonderful things happen every day here at HU. When an English professor hears a student's great analysis of a challenging poem for the first time, wow, what a beautiful thing that is. Are we going to put out a press release on that? Well, no, but that's the core of our work. When one of our scientists adds to the corpus of knowledge in the discipline she loves, standing on the shoulders of scientists before her, wow, how great is that? That makes the world better right there. Knowledge has increased. When a professor employs her or his knowledge, shall I say wisdom, to improve the human condition and make the world better, more just, maybe even more kind, wow. Can you think of a more important thing in the world? And I might add, can you think of a better way to earn a living than that? I can't. My colleagues, this is what we do at HU. That's our core mission. It's been true for many years, no less true today. And that is a beautiful thing, I believe, and I think you agree with me. There will be other important activities this year. The abbreviated accreditation visit this fall, preparing for the full visit afterward, continuing to be good and careful stewards of the resources we do have, no more millstones of debt or uncareful spending around our necks, leaning in hard on more innovations, new programs, more efficient and effective ways to do our business, and more powerful programs to support students. And of course, taking what we all hope are the right steps after COVID, even though experts believe it will never be totally done. Let's revisit those COVID issues I talked about earlier. Here's what I personally think about them. You don't have to agree. If you'll indulge me, I'm not going to cite any more numbers, statistics, or studies. It's going to be more personal than that, but this is what I'm thinking, my opinions alone. Students deciding to stay online once they have that experience under COVID, yeah, I'm confident that will happen, at least in some cases. It might even happen to a significant degree, but I think of what face-to-face instruction has meant to so many of my students and to me, a poor first-generation college student who knew very, very little about the world. My experience was so limited, and the only world I knew was right there in my little rural home, maybe 50 miles around that. That's about it. I attended the local regional university, newly constructed about 20 miles from where I lived. I probably would not have attended if it wasn't close by. And I have a vivid memory of a professor at Southern Illinois University, where I went to school as an undergraduate, who asked me to see him after class. I mean, it terrified me. Come into his office and sit down right in front of him for some reason. I didn't think it was a good one, and it wasn't. And yet, wow, it really, really, really was an incredibly positive thing in my life. Basically, I sat there and he told me that I had not done well on a paper, but that he just knew I could do much, much better. He said something close to, this isn't a direct quote, but it was real close to this. Sam, you're smart and you could really achieve big things, but you just have to try harder. I had never heard anyone say anything close to that in my life. And wow, did it affect me. We left his office and he bought me a Coke at a campus kiosk, shook my hand, waved as he walked to his car. I guess that kind of thing could happen online, but I don't know. I kind of doubt it. So I'm optimistic that face-to-face instructions and the interactions, the deep, powerful, personal, visceral interactions we have with our students will continue to be very, very, very meaningful for so many of them. What about faculty changes due to COVID? Changes in faculty life are inevitable. There's no reason for us to think we're immune from them. And attempts to resist them almost always fail, quite frankly. But the desire for some human beings, some, not all, to achieve a very high level of knowledge and skill in a beloved discipline, and then share that in a highly personal, face-to-face kind of setting with students right there in front of us, man, that's really powerful. I've told so many of my students, doctoral students, that the chances of winning a tenure-track job somewhere to become a full-time practicing academic with a full-time salary and decent benefits are so limited. And yet, most of them persevered and achieved their goals. Some won academic jobs, some didn't. But that desire to learn and achieve at high levels is strong. And I really don't think that will diminish, nor do I think that the intricate dance we enjoy with our students, the ebb and flow of that tested triumvirate, teaching students, making new knowledge, applying what we believe to be true. I don't think that's going to fade in the future. I just don't. Even with all the challenges of serving as an academic in 2020 and the pressures to win an academic job, lots of people still aspire to it because in my view, it can be such a wonderful, fulfilling, and even beautiful life. So I don't think it's going away. However, I will say that academics willing to refine their knowledge and skill in teaching in different modalities are likely to really succeed in the future because that's with us. It's not going away. It's probably going to continue to grow. There may be a gold standard associated with instruction in higher ed, and it may be face-to-face instruction with small classes on a residential campus with ivy creeping up every brick wall. That's how I was socialized. But even if that remains the gold standard, some students, many of them I think, are likely to want, and in some cases demand, maybe even need alternatives to that standard. Next, affordability. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't want to be overly political, but these are my own opinions, as I said at the beginning of this segment of my remarks. You don't have to agree. Post-secondary education in America and in the world should be free or very low cost to students. That's my opinion. I know there is no free lunch, and I know there's no such thing as truly free college. I mean, someone's going to have to pay. But free or low cost college is a beautiful dream to me. And I'm pretty confident. I am. Call me overly optimistic. We'll see that or something close to that before I retire, or maybe before I pass on, fall off a stage at some convocation or whatever. Frankly, I can think of worse ways to go than that. I think it would be very dramatic and quite memorable for the students who were in attendance. Finally, what about issues related to human diversity and equity? Right here on our own campus, we have work to do, no doubt about that. Over the last year, a former colleague here at HU wrote me, and I might note the board, describing what the colleague referred to as a very unwelcoming work environment, and attributed the concerns, at least in part, to the differential and negative treatment experienced here by virtue of ethnicity. In examining our own policies, I recently discovered that several of them designed to increase diversity, I don't think we're following them. I don't know why, but that appears to be the case and a problem. One of our students just recently was subjected to a racial epithet by someone driving through the campus. I don't know who the person was, but it did occur on our own campus. So I'm not suggesting that our issues in this domain are worse or better than those on other campuses, but I am absolutely convinced that we need to courageously face them. I ask that you join me as we engineer ways to do that, ways to make meaningful changes and not merely have discussions about these things from a safe academic distance. We need to do more than that. My colleagues, even with COVID, even with the daunting economic challenges we face, even with all that and more, let's have a great year at HU. I think it's possible, even with those challenges. Let's recommit to teach our students at the highest levels we can muster and they can achieve. Let's help them get a great first job and have a great lifetime career of jobs. But more than that, let's help them leave this place, our campus, to lead lives of meaning and high purpose on whatever paths they might take. Let's enjoy the company of each other as we pursue that noble goal. Let's celebrate the search for new truth and support each other in that incredibly important quest, a quest that academics have led and continue to lead today. Let's be kind and gentle with each other as we apply our knowledge and wisdom to make the world better. Let's engage in model institutional citizenship, not to simply agree with groupthink, or anything like that. One of the best parts of the academy is a good, spirited, roundhouse discussion, debate, even argument, without ad hominem debates or barbs, but to engineer an environment where everyone feels respected and supported in their actions, to agree, to disagree, and in the end, hopefully be able to truthfully assert that HU is a wonderful place to learn and grow as a human being, as an intellectual, and as an ethical actor on the world stage. My colleagues, I promise to recommit to these high ideals myself at the very beginning of this unprecedented, I said it again, I actually wrote it down, and I just said, I hope I never hear that again, but academic year, and I hope you join me. I promise to continue to be the best servant to this institution I can be. You may rest assured, take it to the bank, that every single decision I make is one that I believe is in the best interest of HU overall. I have no interest nor desire to add to my CV or prepare myself for some next job. I'm past all that. However, I know that I will fall short from time to time. When I do, I ask for understanding, but my commitment to HU, our students, our noble mission, it is that. Make no mistake about it. This isn't a job we do. It's much more than that. And commitment to you, my colleagues, the staff, the faculty, my administrative colleagues, the regents, our boards, alumni, friends and supporters of HU, that remains constant and resolute. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, President Menner. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for being with us this morning. Our next session is on another Zoom link. It is in the virtual program that went out. I can also share the link in this, but I hope to see everyone in our next session, led by Dr. Romero Moore and Adrian Sandoval on why diversity and equality matters at HU. So hope to see everyone there. Thank you again.